Welcome to the channel COIN NEXA VAULT. And before we go any further, I want you to think about the last time you actually looked at the coins passing through your hands, because I am about to show you why a single 2021 Roosevelt dime, a coin so recent that you probably have one sitting in a drawer or a coin jar right this very moment, has been documented selling for $335 at a certified auction. And that is not speculation. That is not some YouTube fantasy. That is a real, verified, traceable sale that happened on July 11th, 2022, when an NGC-certified MS69 example hammered on eBay for exactly $335. And I want you to understand what makes that possible, because this is where so much of the fake content on this platform falls apart. They throw around million-dollar headlines with zero documentation. But here at COIN NEXA VAULT, we deal exclusively in auction records you can look up yourself, in grading service population data that exists in black and white, and in the kind of numismatic truth that serious collectors have built their entire financial strategies around. Now, let me take you back to 2021, a year when the United States Mint was still recovering from pandemic-related production disruptions, when coin shortages had Americans emptying their piggy banks and actually paying attention to their change again, and when the Philadelphia Mint struck Roosevelt dimes with a level of quality inconsistency that created genuine opportunities for the informed collector. The 2021 Roosevelt dime came from a mintage that, while substantial, was produced under conditions that left significant variation in strike quality, and that variation is everything in modern coin grading. Because the difference between a coin worth 10 cents and a coin worth $335 comes down to microscopic details that most people never notice, but that professional graders at PCGS and NGC examine with relentless precision. The Roosevelt dime design, unchanged since John R. Sennick created it in 1946, features the president's left-facing portrait on the obverse with Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date, while the reverse carries the iconic torch flanked by olive and oak branches, and it is on that reverse where fortunes are won and lost, specifically in the horizontal bands of the torch, because when those bands show complete, unbroken separation with no metal bridging between them, the coin earns the full bands designation from PCGS or the full torch designation from NGC, and that single technical distinction can multiply value by tenfold or more at the highest grades. For the 2021 specifically, PCGS population data reveals that out of all examples submitted for grading, only a tiny fraction achieve the MS69 level, and within that already minuscule population, the subset that also carries full bands designation becomes extraordinarily elusive, which is precisely why that July 2022 eBay sale of $335 for an NGC MS69 represents a legitimate market event driven by registry, set competition, and serious collector demand, not artificial inflation or clickbait. Fantasy. I know many of you watching this have developed a healthy skepticism toward coin value claims, and you absolutely should, because the internet is flooded with videos claiming common pocket change is worth fortunes. But I am asking you to distinguish between that noise and what I am presenting here, which is a documented, traceable auction result from a major grading service holder that you can verify independently through NGC's own auction price database. And that verification process is exactly what separates informed collectors from those who get taken advantage of by misinformation. The 2021 Roosevelt dime in pristine uncirculated condition exhibits several characteristics that graders scrutinize, including surface preservation free of contact marks, strong original luster that has not been diminished by improper storage or handling, and most critically, a strike sharp enough to render the torch bands with complete separation. And finding all three qualities in a single coin from a modern clad issue is genuinely difficult despite the massive production numbers. Because high-speed minting equipment prioritizes volume over perfection, and the coins that escape the mint with flawless surfaces represent statistical outliers that the market rewards accordingly. Looking at the broader value spectrum for this issue, most 2021 dimes trade at or near face value, with even typical uncirculated examples in MS65 or MS66 bringing only modest premiums. But once you reach MS67 and above, the population drops precipitously, and at MS68 the coin becomes genuinely scarce, while MS69 sits at the absolute pinnacle of what exists for this date. which explains why that $335 realization represents not hype, but genuine rarity within a conditioned census framework that experienced numismatists understand intimately. For those of you who came of age in an era when dimes still bought meaningful things, when a pocketful of change represented real purchasing power, I want you to recognize that while the clad composition of modern dimes lacks the silver content of pre-1965 issues, the collector market has created an entirely different kind of value hierarchy based on preservation quality and strike precision. And that hierarchy rewards knowledge and careful examination in ways that can genuinely supplement a retirement strategy or build legacy wealth for your family. The authentication process for a potentially valuable 2021 P dime is straightforward but essential. You want to examine the coin under good lighting, preferably with a 10x magnifier, looking first at the overall surface quality for any contact marks or abrasions, then at the luster to ensure it remains undisturbed and original, and finally at the reverse torch with particular attention to whether the upper and lower horizontal bands show complete separation without any metal flow connecting them, because that full band's characteristic is the primary value driver beyond raw grade alone. If your specimen appears to meet these criteria, submission to PCGS or NGC for professional grading becomes a financially sensible decision, as the cost of grading and encapsulation, typically $30 to $50 for modern issues, is easily justified when the potential value exceeds $100 or more, and the protection and marketability that a certified holder provides cannot be overstated for serious collectors. I also want to address the discovery potential here, because unlike many historic rarities that have been locked away in collections for generations, the 2021 P is recent enough that pristine examples may still be found in original bank rolls, in uncirculated mint sets, or even occasionally in pocket change from someone who set aside a particularly sharp-looking coin without realizing its potential. And that accessibility is part of what makes modern condition rarities so compelling for collectors who enjoy the hunt as much as the acquisition. As we build toward the next coins in this sequence, I want to prepare you for something remarkable, because the 2015 P Roosevelt dime we will examine next carries an auction history that includes not only high-grade business strikes, but also some of the most fascinating error coins in the entire modern Roosevelt series, including off-center strikes and missing clad layers that have brought substantial sums at heritage auctions, and the technical story behind those errors connects directly to the minting process evolution that every serious collector should understand. The market for top population modern Roosevelt dimes has shown consistent strength over the past decade, driven largely by registry set competition, where collectors vie to assemble the highest-rated sets in the PCGS and NGC registry programs. And that competitive pressure ensures that coins at the absolute top of the population reports maintain strong demand regardless of broader economic conditions. Because for registry participants, owning the finest known example of a given date is not merely about money but about achievement and recognition within the numismatic community. For those of you examining your own collections as we speak, I encourage you to pull out any 2021 P dimes you have set aside and give them a careful look under magnification, because the difference between a 10-cent coin and a $335 coin might be visible to the trained eye even without professional grading equipment. And developing that observational skill is one of the most rewarding aspects of serious collecting. I want to close this section with a direct invitation to verify everything I have shared. Go to the NGC auction price database, search the 2021 P Roosevelt dime, and confirm that MS69 sale from July 2022 for yourself. Because the confidence that comes from independent verification is exactly what distinguishes sophisticated collectors from those who rely on unverified claims. And at COIN NEXA VAULT, we believe that empowering you with traceable, documented information is the foundation of everything we do. If you appreciate this commitment to verified research over sensationalized nonsense, I would be honored if you would subscribe to the channel and share this video with fellow collectors who value truth in a hobby that has been polluted by too much fabricated content. Because together we can build a community that rewards knowledge, patience, and the genuine thrill of documented discovery. Stay with me, because what comes next with the 2015 P will expand your understanding of how modern minting errors can transform ordinary coins into extraordinary auction results. And the specific technical details we will explore are exactly the kind of information that can change how you examine every coin that passes through your hands from this day forward. Next, the 2015 Roosevelt dime. And I want to open this examination with a moment of pure numismatic astonishment, because while most Americans in 2015 were focused on presidential campaigns and economic recovery, the Philadelphia Mint was producing Roosevelt dimes that would later stun the collecting world, including one pristine PCGS certified MS-68 example that traded hands on eBay in June 2015 for $344, a figure that might seem modest compared to the historic rarities we all dream about, yet represents a staggering 3,440 times face value for a coin that millions of people spent without a second thought. And that realization is precisely what keeps experienced collectors examining every single modern coin that crosses their path. I grew up in an era when finding a Mercury diamond change was still possible, when the silver content alone made every dime worth examining. And I know many of you watching share that same visceral memory of the weight and ring of real silver in your pocket, but what I am presenting here is something different. Something that proves the clad-era coins we have all handled thousands of times can harbor genuine value when they emerge from the minting process with exceptional preservation and strike characteristics that defy the odds of mass production. The 2015 Roosevelt dime belongs to a period when the United States Mint had fully transitioned to its current coinage materials, the copper-nickel clad composition that replaced silver in 1965. And while this composition lacks intrinsic bullion value, it has created an entirely new collecting paradigm where condition rarity drives the market, where the finest surviving examples of each date command premiums that would have seemed impossible to our fathers and grandfathers who measured coin worth primarily by metal content. The specific coin that achieved $344 in June 2015 was graded PCGS MS-68, a designation that places it among the absolute finest 2015 dimes ever certified. And when you understand that PCGS population reports show MS-68 as the highest grade awarded for this particular date, with only a handful of examples achieving that pinnacle, you begin to grasp why serious collectors pursuing registry set completion will pay substantial premiums for top population coins regardless of the issue's overall mintage figures. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room, because I know some of you are thinking that $344 is not exactly life-changing money, and you are absolutely right in the strictest sense, yet I urge you to consider the broader financial framework here. Because finding a single coin worth $344 in a $10 bankroll represents a return on investment that would make any stock trader weep with envy. And more importantly, it represents the kind of accessible discovery that ordinary collectors can still make without inheriting a fortune or spending years at estate sales. The 2015 MS-68 exhibits characteristics that separate it from the billions of ordinary dimes produced that year, starting with virtually flawless surfaces that show no contact marks from the minting process or subsequent handling, continuing with original mint luster that remains undisturbed and vibrant under proper lighting, and culminating in a strike so sharp that the torch on the reverse displays the full band's designation that PCGS awards only when the horizontal bands show complete, unbroken separation with crisp detail throughout. For those of you who have spent decades building collections, who remember when grading was done by eye and experience rather than plastic holders and population reports, I want to acknowledge that the modern certification system can feel impersonal at times. Yet the transparency it provides has fundamentally changed how we understand rarity. Because when PCGS publishes population data showing exactly how many MS-68 2015 dimes exist, that information becomes a verifiable foundation for value that no amount of hype or speculation can undermine, and that verifiability is exactly what separates legitimate numismatic opportunities from the fabricated nonsense that floods so many online platforms. The 2015 also occupies a fascinating position in the Roosevelt dime series because it represents the standard Philadelphia business strike from a year that also produced the special silver reverse proof sets, creating a production environment where mint resources were divided between regular circulation coinage and premium collector products. And that division sometimes resulted in quality variations in the business strikes that attentive collectors have learned to exploit. When you examine a 2015p dime for potential value, you want to begin with the obverse portrait, looking for any signs of weakness in Roosevelt's hair details or the "I in God we trust" lettering, because a weak strike in those areas immediately disqualifies a coin from the highest grades regardless of surface preservation. Then move to the reverse where the torch bands demand your closest scrutiny, as the full bands designation requires not merely visible bands, but complete separation with no metal flow connecting the upper and lower pairs, a standard that eliminates the vast majority of coins from consideration. I want to pause here and speak directly to those of you who may have inherited collections from parents or grandparents who save coins not because they expected fortune, but because they understood the value of preservation. Because I have seen too many families rush to cash in inherited holdings without proper examination, without understanding that the modern coins Great-Aunt Mildred set aside in 2015 might contain specimens that would make a registry set collector pay serious money. And the tragedy of those hasty liquidations is that they are entirely preventable with the kind of knowledge we are sharing right here. The authentication pathway for a potentially valuable 2015p is identical to what we discussed for the 2021p. You begin with careful visual examination under magnification. You compare your specimen against the grading standards published by PCGS and NGC. And if your coin appears to meet the criteria for MS67 or higher with potential full bands, you submit it for professional certification through a reputable grading service. Because the difference between raw and certified examples in this grade range can be $100 or more, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing your coin has been authenticated by experts is worth far more than the grading fee. Looking at the broader auction landscape for 2015p dimes, we see a clear value progression that mirrors what we observed with the 2021p, with most examples trading at face value or modest premiums until you reach the MS67 level, where prices begin climbing into the $50 to $100 range, then jumping dramatically at MS68, where the population scarcity creates genuine competition among advanced collectors. And that price curve is one of the most reliable patterns in modern coin collecting because it reflects not artificial scarcity, but genuine statistical rarity within the certified population. I also want to mention the error coin possibilities for 2015p, because while our focus here is on the standard business strike, this date has produced some remarkable minting anomalies, including off-center strikes and missing clad layers that have brought $430 or more at heritage auctions. And the technical knowledge required to identify these errors is exactly the kind of expertise that separates casual hobbyists from serious numismatists who can spot opportunity where others see only pocket change. As we transition toward the final coin in this sequence, I need to prepare you for something that will fundamentally alter your understanding of what modern Roosevelt dimes can achieve at auction, because the 1989 D we will examine next carries a documented sale history that reaches into the thousands of dollars. With an MS68 full bands example commanding $5,280 in March 2020, a figure that transforms this entire conversation from interesting speculation into serious financial territory. And the specific technical reasons behind that extraordinary value will give you insights that apply far beyond this single date. For those of you who have stayed with me through these examinations, I want to express genuine appreciation for your patience and discernment, because the collectors who succeed in this hobby are not the ones who chase every sensational headline, but the ones who build systematic knowledge, who verify claims independently, and who understand that real value in numismatics comes from documented rarity, not fabricated fantasy. And if you find that approach refreshing in an era of misinformation, I would be grateful if you would subscribe to COIN NEXA VAULT and help us build a community that values truth above hype. The 2015p Roosevelt dime in top grades represents a perfect entry point for collectors who want to experience the thrill of significant discovery without the barrier of ancient rarity or unattainable cost, because at $344 for the finest known examples, it sits in a sweet spot where verification is affordable, competition is genuine, and the satisfaction of owning a top population coin is accessible to dedicated collectors at every financial level. I want to close this section with a final reminder that every claim I have made can be independently verified through the PCGS population database and auction price archives, because the credibility of this channel rests entirely on traceable, documented facts. And I would rather present a $344 coin with absolute certainty than fabricate a $1 million claim that collapses under scrutiny, because respect for your intelligence and experience is the foundation of everything we do here. Keep examining your change, keep building your knowledge, and stay with me for the climax of this sequence, because what comes next with the 1989D will demonstrate why Denver Mint Roosevelt dimes from the late 1980s have become some of the most fiercely contested coins in the entire modern series. Next, the 1989D Roosevelt dime. And I want you to sit back and absorb what I am about to share, because this is the moment where everything we have discussed about modern coin values crystallizes into a figure that can genuinely change your financial perspective, a coin that looks identical to the countless dimes you have spent over decades, yet has been documented selling for $5,280 at auction in March 2020. And that is not a typo. That is not a fantasy. That is a real, verified, traceable auction result for an MS68 full bands example that represents the absolute pinnacle of what this date can achieve, and I need you to understand why that value exists, why it is legitimate, and why it matters to every single collector watching this video right now. I remember 1989 vividly. It was a year of transition. The Berlin Wall would fall months later. The economy was shifting, and at the Denver Mint, technicians were striking Roosevelt dimes with dies that would create one of the most conditionally challenging issues in the entire modern clad series, because the 1989D emerged from a production environment where die wear, planchet quality variation, and minting equipment calibration combined to produce coins that rarely survived with both pristine surfaces and the sharp strike detail necessary for top grades. And that production reality is the foundation of every dollar of that $5,280 value. Let me be absolutely clear about the documentation here, because in an era where fake coin videos claim common pocket change is worth millions with zero evidence, I am presenting you with a sale that you can verify independently through major auction archives and grading service records. A sale that occurred when a certified MS68 full bands 1989D Roosevelt dime crossed the auction block and hammered at $5,280. And while that specific sale represents the highest documented realization for this date, the value spectrum extends from face value for circulated examples through hundreds of dollars for MS66 and MS67 specimens, creating a complete financial hierarchy that rewards knowledge at every level. The 1989D Roosevelt dime belongs to a fascinating period in American numismatics, the late 1980s, when the Denver Mint was operating at high capacity to meet commercial demand, when clad coinage had been standard for over 2 decades and collectors had largely shifted their attention to commemorative issues and precious metal products. Yet beneath that surface indifference, the minting process was creating subtle variations that would later become extraordinarily valuable to those who understood what to look for. And the full bands designation on the reverse torch is the primary technical characteristic that separates ordinary examples from numismatic treasures. When PCGS or NGC graders examine a 1989D for the full bands designation, they are looking at the horizontal bands of the torch with microscopic precision, because the standard for this attribution requires complete, unbroken separation between the upper pair of bands and the lower pair, with no metal flow, no die or softness, and no planchet irregularities obscuring the detail. And achieving that standard on a Denver Mint coin from 1989 is genuinely difficult because the Mint's high speed, production priorities, and die maintenance schedules during this period often resulted in strikes that were adequate for commerce, but fell short of the crisp definition that collectors prize. The population data for 1989D dimes tells a story of extreme scarcity at the highest levels, because while millions were produced, the number that have been certified MS68 with full bands designation is vanishingly small, and within that tiny population, the competition among registry set collectors and advanced specialists creates market dynamics that drive prices to levels that seem almost unbelievable for a clad dime until you understand the statistical reality behind the numbers, because when only a handful of examples exist in the finest known grade, Collectors who need that specific coin to complete their sets will pay virtually whatever it takes to acquire it. I want to speak directly to those of you who have been collecting since the 1960s or 1970s, who remember when Roosevelt dimes were still silver, who handled these coins daily as part of ordinary commerce, because I know that the transition to clad coinage felt like a loss of intrinsic value to many experienced collectors. Yet what the 1989 D at $5,280 demonstrates is that a new form of value has emerged in the modern era, one based not on metal content, but on condition rarity, on the survival of perfect specimens against all odds, and on the expertise required to identify and authenticate those survivors. And this new paradigm requires exactly the kind of knowledge and patience that seasoned collectors have spent decades developing. The technical specifications of the 1989 D are straightforward yet critical for proper identification. It weighs 2.27 grams with the standard copper-nickel clad composition, measures 17.91 millimeters in diameter, and carries the Denver Mint's D Mint mark on the obverse below the date. But the characteristics that create value are invisible to casual observation. They require examination of the strike sharpness, the surface preservation, the luster quality, and most critically, the torch band separation on the reverse. And developing the eye to evaluate these factors is one of the most rewarding skills in numismatics because it transforms every coin you handle into a potential discovery. Looking at the broader auction history for 1989 D Roosevelt dimes, we see a consistent pattern of strong prices for high-grade examples with full bands designation, with MS-66 specimens typically realizing $50 to $100, MS-67 examples commanding $200 to $400, and MS-68 pieces reaching into the thousands when they appear at major auction houses. And that price progression reflects not speculative bubbles, but genuine collector demand driven by registry set competition, condition census awareness, and the irrefutable scarcity that population reports document in black and white. I need to emphasize the authentication importance here, because at these value levels, counterfeiting and alteration become genuine concerns, and the only way to protect yourself and your investment is through submission to PCGS or NGC for professional grading and encapsulation, because their experts examine not only the coin's condition but also its authenticity. Using advanced diagnostics including metal composition analysis, die characteristic comparison, and surface examination under multiple lighting conditions, and a coin in a PCGS or NGC holder with the full bands designation carries a level of market confidence that raw specimens simply cannot match. For those of you examining your own collections or inherited holdings, I want to stress the discovery potential of the 1989 D, because unlike many historic rarities that have been locked away for generations, this is a modern coin that could still appear in old mint sets, in bankrolls that have been sitting untouched for decades, or even occasionally in pocket change from someone who set aside a particularly sharp-looking dime without understanding its potential. And that accessibility is part of what makes the hunt so compelling for collectors who combine knowledge with persistence. The market dynamics for top-grade 1989 D dimes have shown remarkable consistency over the past decade, with prices appreciating steadily as more collectors enter the registry set arena and as the finite supply of MS-68 full bands examples remains essentially unchanged. Because unlike bullion coins where new production affects market psychology, the population of certified MS-68 1989 D dimes is fixed by what has already been discovered and graded, and every new registry set participant who needs this specific coin increases demand without increasing supply, creating the fundamental economic conditions that support sustained value appreciation. I want to address the skepticism that some experienced collectors feel toward modern clad coinage, because I share your instinctive preference for silver and gold, yet the auction records do not lie. The $5,280 sale in March 2020 is documented and traceable. The population reports show genuine scarcity at the highest grades, and the collector demand is verified by actual competitive bidding at major numismatic events. And while these coins will never replace Morgan dollars or St. Gaudens double eagles in the hearts of traditional collectors, they represent a legitimate and accessible avenue for significant financial discovery that deserves your serious attention. As we reach the conclusion of this three-coin sequence, I want to reflect on what we have covered, from the 2021 P at $335 to the 2015 P at $344, and finally, to this extraordinary 1989 D at $5,280. And I hope you recognize the pattern that connects them all, which is that genuine value in numismatics comes from documented rarity, from verifiable condition scarcity, and from the expertise to identify characteristics that the market rewards, not from fabricated headlines or million-dollar fantasies that collapse under scrutiny. And that commitment to truth is what defines COIN NEXA VAULT and what I believe distinguishes this channel from the overwhelming flood of misinformation that has polluted the coin collecting community. I want to close with a direct appeal to your experience and intelligence, because you have spent decades developing the judgment that allows you to spot false promises and exaggerated claims, and I am asking you to apply that same discernment to everything you encounter in the coin video space, to verify claims independently, to demand documentation, and to support content creators who respect your knowledge enough to provide traceable, auction-backed information rather than sensationalized nonsense designed to generate clicks at the expense of truth. If you have found value in this examination of the 1989 D Roosevelt dime and the broader sequence we have explored, I would be deeply honored if you would subscribe to COIN NEXA VAULT, share this video with fellow collectors who appreciate verified research, and leave your own experiences and discoveries in the comments. Because the community we are building here is founded on mutual respect, shared knowledge, and the genuine excitement that comes from documented numismatic discovery, not fabricated fantasy. Remember that real opportunities exist in this hobby, that ordinary people do find extraordinary coins, and that the $5,280 1989 D we examined today is proof that modern clad coinage can harbor genuine value for those who take the time to learn, to examine carefully, and to verify through professional authentication, and that knowledge, combined with patience and persistence, is the true foundation of numismatic success. Thank you for your attention, your skepticism, and your commitment to truth in collecting. And I look forward to continuing this journey with you as we explore more verified, documented, and genuinely valuable coins in the videos to come.